Let's take a look now at installing Android Studio. So we're going to go here to we're on the Android developer page. It's going to go to develop. I'm going to go to tools. And you'll find now that if we go to the download section, now on here there's listed an Android Studio. Now, something to be aware of is that as I'm doing this, as I'm recording this video, this is in pre-release. In fact, it's literally in what they call their 0.1 release. So the details of some of the things you have to do along the way may change depending on when you're watching this, but fundamentally it should always be the same thing, the same work we're doing. Now, one thing that we are required to do is make sure we already have Java installed on our machine, right? So just like we did earlier when we installed Eclipse, we want to make sure we install that same version, right? So just in case you forgot where we checked that out, right, is that I'm going to go here to setting up the ADT bundle, which we're not going to do. I'm just going to go there to look and see where things are, right? So go to that. I'm going to click on this link here. It just says Android ADT bundle. And remember that when we were on this page, again, this is the same page we looked at earlier, that down there was a system requirements. Right, so system requirements, we want to make sure we have whatever version of Java, or I should say the JDK, that's listed right here. Again, it's exactly the same as what we did when we installed Eclipse. Right, so I'm going to go back here to Android Studio now. You'll notice that there's a download Android Studio. In this case, it says version 0.1. Depending when you're watching this, that version number will obviously change. Right, so to do the download, we just click on that to bring it down to our machine. Right, of course, we're going to have to accept the terms and conditions. All right, so once we do that, our download begins. All right, so our download's completed now, and you see here I have the Android Studio bundle here, as opposed to the ADT bundle, which is what we did with Eclipse. Right, this is the Android Studio bundle, and the key thing to notice is that this is an actual executable. Right, we're actually going to run and install here. Now, one issue that's coming up with Android Studio at this point, I suspect it will get fixed eventually, but right now, one of the issues is that Android Studio is not always able to find your Java installation. So what we have to do is we need to set an environment variable to assure that Android Studio is able to find it. Right? So what we're going to do is go out to our C drive here. I'm just going to open this up in a different window. I'm going to go to my program files. Right, Java is in a subdirectory called Java. And then this is the JDK right here. I'm going to go inside of there. And what I want to do now is just go up here, highlight that, right, and then copy it. So that's the path to where Java is installed on my machine right now. So what I'll do now is go out to my control panel. So click on Start, go to the control panel. I'm going to go to my system entries. When that comes up, I want to go to Advanced System Settings. And then here is Environment Variables. So I'm going to open that up. I'm going to create a new environment variable called Java_home. So Java_home. And then I'm going to take that path that I copied and paste that right into here. Because what will happen is that Android Studio will look for that variable. If it finds that variable, it will go ahead and use that to locate Java. According to the documentation right now, it says sometimes it finds the Java, sometimes it doesn't. I've set up several machines now. None of them have found it on their own. I always had to have this environment variable there. Another thing to note too is that some tools having nothing to do with what we're doing right now with Android will try to set up that Java home environment variable themselves. If that's set wrong, Android Studio will just kind of silently fail. Right? So you want to make sure you have Java home set up as an environment variable. And if something else has already set it up, make sure the value in it is correct. Because if it's not correct, Android Studio will not work. So we've got that all set there. So I'm going to say OK to close that down. Get OK my way out of here. Go ahead and close on the control panel. Close down that folder. So now I'm back to where I actually did my download of the Android Studio bundle. Right. So let's go ahead and start that up. So I'm going to go ahead and let it take over. Right. So say yes. Just go through the wizard now. Next. Now, one thing to notice too is that it's checking. It's showing that it has found Java for me, right? So that's good. It's found my Java home variable. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and install it just for me. And you notice the path that it's installing it into is a little bit odd for Windows developers. What they're doing is they're installing it kind of under my home folder, right? In a Unix environment, that's actually very normal to do that. In Windows, we generally don't do that as much. In my experience, in these pre-release softwares, I'm going to go ahead and leave that directory the same as whatever it's defaulting to. You may want to go ahead and try and change it. Definitely, as this gets to a production grade release, you can obviously set that anywhere you want it to. But again, I'm going to leave it as a default because I am dealing with pre-release software. So I'll say next. Going to go ahead and let it create my start menu, and now it's off and running. So now we can see our installation has completed successfully. So we'll say next. I'm going to go ahead and leave the Start Android Studio box checked and click Finish. And here we are inside of Android Studio. Just a couple things to be aware of is depending on your machine, I do find the very first time you run Android Studio, at least in this pre-release version, is that many seconds may go by before you actually see anything happening. So when you go ahead and start it up, don't panic if you don't see it start up right away. I found too that once you start it the first time, it starts much faster after that. Okay, but we can see now that we actually have a successful installation of Android Studio. As part of installing Android Studio, all of the tools and everything that we use for our Android development got installed as well. So the whole SDK got installed. Now, in this version that I just installed, this pre-release version, it installs it into an odd area. It installs it into kind of the private application data area under the user. And what I suspect that comes from is that Google is a very Unix-based company, or a lot of its mindsets are very Unix-based. Of course, Android is Unix-based. And in the Unix world, putting things under a user's home directory is a common thing to do. In Windows, not as much, right? At least not kind of the same way. And we'll find that this default installation has actually put the SDK and all those platform tools like ADB and so forth into a hidden area of our file system, right? So one way around that would be to not accept the default installation. As I had mentioned, because this is pre-release software, I tend to want to go and accept the defaults where I can. So what I'm going to do here for now, I'm going to go ahead and close up Android Studio. And I want to go out to where my tools are, if I want to be able to run ADB and so forth. Now, what I'm going to do is just go out to my C drive. Right now, I'm going to go out to Users. And the user for this machine here is called Android Tegra 01, so I'm going to go in there. If I was to look at the path where Android Studio was installed, I know there was an app data folder under here. Well, the thing they've done is they've installed it into a hidden folder. So what I need to do is make hidden folders visible if you don't already do that. The way we do that is we go out here to Start. I'm going to just go up to Control Panel. I'm going to bring up my folder options. And then inside of here, I'm just going to choose this View tab. And here where it says Hidden Files and Folders, by default, it'll say Don't Show Hidden Files and Folders. I want to say I want you to go ahead and show Hidden Files and Folders. Now when I say OK, I'll go ahead and close down the Control Panel. You see that there's now an App Data folder visible under the Users folder. Now if I go down here into App Data, see inside there, there's a local area. Go in there. Now we'll see that there is the Android area, Android Studio, and then down here is SDK. This SDK folder is just like the SDK folder that got installed under the other Android bundle, right? So if I go into there, now these are the folders I'm familiar with, Platform Tools, right? There's ADB, right? So if I go up here to my File Explorer and I type in CMD, so now if I do a dir in here, I can see things like there's my ADB utility, right? So if I want to do something like kill the server, I can just do something like ADB kill-server. And that's now the folder where ADB is installed and set up and running.